Before we get into it, though, I do want to tell you a little bit about the Denzel West Center. If you are not familiar, some of you are, some of you aren't, but we are a non-for-profit community that serves persons impacted by dementia. And we do that through a variety of services. Y'all are taking advantage of our free education and support and resources today. So we offer over 100 different programs, support groups all throughout the year, online, in person, hybrid, you name it, whether it's about how do we age healthy, really diving deep into caregiving skills, end of life, support groups Hollie facilitates that we meet every week. And these are all free and open to the community. It's part of our charitable gift back as a nonprofit. But we also have our long-term care community, which is the building that those of you in person are in right now. And we have our residents that live here, and we take compassionate expert care of the residents and our family members. We can do short-term respite stays. We can do short-term rehabilitation. We have a senior adult day program located in Southwest Fort Worth. And then starting July 1, we will have in-home care. So our services from the James O. West Center can go into exciting, right? So, and we're happy to talk with you more about those services if you have that. Hollie, you want to share yourself? Introduce yourself.
So I'm Hollie, and I am the Director of Education and Family Support Services. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I run the support groups here at the West Center. We've got an online group that meets every Wednesday at 1, which many of you are part of, especially those of you online. We've got an in-person group, and we've got some of our in-person members here that meets every Friday at 11. And then we've got a special monthly group that meets the second Saturday of each month from 10:30 to 12 online. And that group is specific to the grief of caregiving. Grief just meaning loss, because throughout the course of the disease, we go through a whole lot of loss as the caregiver. So we've got a special group that just meets, talks about that. And then Jamie and I both get to travel and present to professionals all across the United States, because as Jamie said, part of our goal is educating everyone. Because just because somebody's got nurse, social worker, or doctor on their initials doesn't mean they know a thing about dementia. As you all know, it was probably a course in a class many, many years ago, if they even had it. So we get out there in front of professionals and teach them as well.
And I'm Jamie. Yep, I'm Jamie. And I have been working with dementia and their families for over about 18 years now. And as you will, I will share with you as we go throughout today and the rest of this week, we have both Hollie and I have personal experiences, and then of course our professional experience. So today I'll share a lot about my dad, my grandpa, my mom had some stages or signs of dementia before she passed away, some grandparents. So we're, and I like to say it's, yes, we're doing this professionally, it's a job, but it is more so a mission and passion, I think, of both myself and Hollie. So on here, we have the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about statistics, because we really want to understand what is the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And we'll talk about what the difference between those are, of course. But Alzheimer's disease and the related dementias, it is a worldwide. It's not just a state of Texas or an American problem. It is across the nation, across the globe, excuse me, that each country, community, tribe is experiencing dementia and Alzheimer's disease. 68% of persons around the world are concerned about getting dementia in later life. So it's also a feared disease, and it's a scary disease, right? But I want us to understand, and I think if you don't take away anything from today, I want you to know that Alzheimer's disease and dementia are not a normal part of aging. Just because we're getting older does not mean everybody will get dementia or Alzheimer's. It's not a normal part of aging. We're going to look at some numbers. It is becoming a more common diagnosis that we see. Age is a great risk factor. but it is not a normal part of aging. So if we see changes in, dad or grandpa or honey, well, just getting older, it's supposed to happen. That's not true. Okay, but there's still a big misunderstanding about that in our society. It's not a normal part of aging. And actually, if this disease, right now, there's not a cure, there's not a way to slow it down, there's not a way to stop the progression. They're working towards that, but we don't currently have that. But even if we were to delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease and dementia, incorporating some of these choices, these proven ways that we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks, and if we delay the onset of dementia, that can reduce the numbers that we have. And really it's saying, if I'm going to get Alzheimer's disease, do I want to get it when I'm 80 or do I want to get it when I'm 85? Well, I'm going to choose 85, right? And if there are going to be some things that I can do to really reduce my risk or delay that onset, I'm going to do that. And that's what we're going to talk about here. Did you want to record that? It's recording. I hope.
It is.
Okay, thanks. Hey, you messed me up.
What were people trying to get in?
Oh. Holly did it on purpose. There we go. I'm just kidding. Oh no. Okay, so here are our statistics. So there's currently about 7 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease. By 2050, this number is expected to increase by nearly 13 million. So we are seeing people getting diagnosed more. And really a big reason for this is we're diagnosing it better. So we're able to diagnose it better. People are actually starting to talk about it a little bit better. We need to continue to talk about it, but we're getting diagnosed a little bit more in a timely manner, I should say. Or also it is the greatest risk factor I mentioned is age. So we do see this predominantly in 65 plus. We are starting people in their 50s, early 60s also getting diagnosed. Those numbers are increasing as well. But our oldest population is also our largest population. Okay, so we're seeing more and more people diagnosed because our oldest population is the largest. Does that make sense? So that's why those numbers have increased from there. It's also for Hispanic communities and African American communities, there is an increase. For Hispanics, it's 1.5 times greater, and for African Americans, 2 times greater risk of diagnosis. And a lot of that has to do with several things: social determinants of health, access to health care, but they're also at a higher risk for some heart-related illnesses as well that can increase your risk. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Right now, with one person diagnosed with dementia, there's at least 2 people that are taken care of. So we have, I would say, a crisis in caregiving. Right? We have all these caregivers taking care of persons with dementia that are doing their best. They're coming to classes, they're learning, that it is also a very rewarding experience, but it can also be very demanding, right? And if they don't take care of themselves, then that can cause further health problems for those caregivers. So we're seeing an increase in stress-related diagnoses for caregivers of persons with dementia. And then I will say 54% of people having self-perceived difficulties with memory or thinking, just changes that are happening, have not talked to a doctor. And I think this goes back to the stigma that we're trying to dispel, right? But as soon as I understand or notice some changes, let's go ahead and talk to the doctor about it, a trusted doctor. Or let's learn, is this maybe a medication side effect? Let's flush this stuff out so we can take the proper action for what's causing the changes that are happening in me. Whether that's Alzheimer's disease or related dementia, or it's an infection or something like that, but we're getting the proper treatment for the changes that I'm noticing. But we got to talk to a trusted doctor about it. And we don't need to panic. We just need to have honest conversations. And I will say this, we are the ones that need to start that conversation, because we can't necessarily rely on our doctors to ask those questions. Okay, so we need to say, if I'm noticing it in myself or a loved one, I'm the one that needs to speak up. And I might need to speak up a couple of times. I might need to say, hey, doctor, I really need you to listen to my concerns and let's really try and figure this out together.
Hey.
Oh, you're showing video. It didn't pop up.
All right, so let's look at causes of memory loss. If you've been on our programs in the past, you know that we teach that dementia is that umbrella term, just like the word cancer is an umbrella term. If somebody were to come up to you and say something like, my loved one was just diagnosed with cancer, usually our first question would be what?
What kind?
What kind, what type, what form? Same thing with dementia. It's an umbrella term. There's over 100 different types of dementia. These are the ones we see the most often. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type, form, or cause of dementia. People mix that up. I even hear healthcare professionals mix that up. I've had families say to me, like, my loved one has Alzheimer's, but they don't have dementia.
I had a doctor tell me that my mother had Alzheimer's, but not dementia.
Yes, because it probably was not a neurologist.
Yes, it was.
It was.
It was.
Ouch. So under the dementia umbrella, up to 80% of all dementias is Alzheimer's disease, 60 to 80%, 60 to 80, so 70's in the middle there.
Okay.
That's disheartening, but that's why we're out in front of professionals also.
You
So-
retired, so don't worry about it.
Now, a person can say the opposite. They could say my loved one has dementia, but they don't have Alzheimer's. Because maybe they've got one of these others. But then let's look at some of these more common types, just kind of doing a high overview on them. With Alzheimer's disease being the one that we see the most often, vascular dementia is exactly what it sounds like. When you hear vascular, what do you think of? Heart, cardiovascular. So if at any time during that person's life, they've had any issues with their heart, because people will go, oh, but that was 40 years ago. Right, it was 40 years ago, but there was damage done that now is showing up. Because we know that even with Alzheimer's disease, that plaque that starts growing on their brain starts 10 to 20 years before we start seeing symptoms. And sometimes there are symptoms, but because you don't know, if you don't work in the field, how would you know that that was a symptom of dementia? Most people think, let me just ask this group that's here right now. Tell me a symptom of dementia.
Getting lost.
Getting lost, there's one.
Behavior change.
Behavior changes. What are some others? The most common.
Memory loss.
Memory loss. The majority of people, if you ask them, tell me all about dementia, they'll go, they forget, they can't remember, and they have memory loss. Right, those are all the same thing. Because that's all that most people know about it. And if those of you who are living with somebody who has dementia, or you're reading about it, there's actually about 36 common that can be showing up 10, 15 years before that memory loss ever hits. And we might be going, I bet it's their hearing, I bet it's their eyesight, I bet they're aging, when it's actually the dementia creeping up. So cardiovascular, what is this? Most commonly, strokes. And that can be TIAs, those little teeny tiny pinpoint strokes. They're still causing some damage. Diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, obesity, and boy, right up at the top is smoking. We now know also untreated depression falls into this category. Now, this is all untreated, high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, depression, untreated, because it's changing the brain. And if it goes untreated for long enough, vascular dementia can occur. Frontotemporal dementia can even show up with no memory loss. Frontotemporal and dementia bodies can present with no memory loss, but many times it presents with some pretty challenging expressions. And they'll get misdiagnosed over and over and over, especially FTD, frontotemporals, as psych, as something psychological. Because that may be what it looks like. Lewy body many times gets misdiagnosed as Parkinson's because it can present and look like Parkinson's. It may present with a difference with a tremor or a difference in their gait, the way that they're walking or the way that their body, the way they're holding themselves. And sometimes if someone just goes to a primary care physician, they may even start treating them for Parkinson's, and they don't have Parkinson's. But here's something interesting. A person can have Parkinson's and Lewy body at the same time. They can have any of these together. That's what's called mixed dementia. And statistics now showing, I believe the last number I saw was up to about 80% of people who die with dementia actually have mixed, and the secondary is almost always vascular, where they've got Alzheimer's with vascular, Lewy body with vascular. Because how many people make it through their entire life and don't have some type of cardiovascular issue, either high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, something along the way? Stress. I'd love to meet the person that makes it to and never had any stress. Please let me know about them. Huntington's disease, secondary dementia. And when we use the word secondary dementia, we're talking about something that starts as another disease like Parkinson's disease. Not everybody with Parkinson's is going to develop dementia, but there is a PDD, Parkinson's disease dementia. So then it's called a secondary. I love this cartoon. Isn't this the best? There's the dinosaurs. Oh crap, was that today? They missed the boat. And so we have no more dinosaurs. So there are some things that can cause memory loss that are not dementia. In healthcare, unfortunately, they call this reversible dementia. But then people hear that and think, oh, we can reverse dementia. When in reality, what we can reverse is some types of memory loss. So if someone is having memory loss because, now I want us to think back, and I'm going to say a date that's going to send some of you into a panic. Please don't. March of 2020. Oh, the pandemic. There were people during 2020 that became so withdrawn, stayed in that house, never left, weren't talking to anybody, that if you were to talk to them, they may have appeared to have some memory loss. And it was due to isolation, it was due to depression, it was due to no socialization at all. Well, they start coming out, talking, lifting that veil of depression. They don't have dementia. They were very, very depressed. Even an electrolyte imbalance can cause some memory loss. Well, the electrolytes, and there they are back again. Someone's thyroid can cause some memory loss or confusion. Malnutrition can cause memory loss. Medication side effects and interactions with other drugs or alcohol can cause some memory loss. Not getting enough sleep. I read just this weekend a study that they did, and they did it with medical students, of course, because medical students are those ones that'll be on call for 24, 36, 48 hours. And they did it with, because they were trying to show, it was a study on caffeine. Does caffeine, the study was about how clear you are when you've had no sleep on caffeine or on taking short naps. They were the same. You're awake with caffeine and with little short naps, but the clarity, and you're just not very clear if you're not having good sleep. You can make bad decisions, and you can seem to be really confused or have some memory loss when that's not what it is. You're sleep deprived. Lifestyle choices. Now think about why smoking is on there. And again, people will say, but they quit smoking 20 years ago. Of course, they smoked for 40 before that. Well, there was some damage done. Yay that they stopped. That's good that they stopped. But there was a lot of damage done. Now, did they realize it at the time? It was so subtle, it was so slow that that just became the way that they breathe, where they're not getting that deep breath and pushing that oxygenated blood up to their brain. Depression and anxiety, they really started studying this, and in 2019 is when the studies first started coming out about untreated depression and anxiety changing the brain structure because of the chemicals in the brain. But there's such a stigma because unfortunately, depression and anxiety fall under what they call mental health. And people hear mental health and they go, oh, no, 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 I'm fine. I'm fine. Depression can be treated 80% of the time. It can be completely cured 80% of the time. And 100% of the time, we can at least treat symptoms. People don't talk about it. So there's a stigma. Let's call it brain health instead of mental health. Maybe that will help. So what is dementia? I mentioned earlier, it's really about 36 symptoms. These are the most common. Of course, memory is going to be up there, and it typically starts with that short-term memory, where we're just going, I just told you about. And for a while, it works to use reminder setups and cues, but eventually short-term is gone, immediate is gone, and for many people, long-term stays, and it stays for a very, very long time. Thinking and reasoning and the ability to problem solve. This is huge also. It seems like they can't be rational, right? Because that is all right here. That's in the frontal lobe. And especially on somebody with FTD, those frontotemporal dementias, sometimes this is how it presents, is they just can't be reasonable or rational anymore. They're making decisions that are not reasonable. This is where driving can come in, paying bills can come in, and you can talk louder and slower all day long. You're not going to get through to them because their brain's changing. Judgment, focus, and paying attention. It can be almost like somebody develops attention deficit disorder. They just can't pay attention. And what's happening is that they can't stay focused on it, or there's too much happening. That TV show is too long. It's moving too fast. Language skills. The language, there's two language centers. That left language is going to leave. That's the day-to-day language. That is the language we're doing right now. Sounds. Right language stays. It's called right rhythm. So music is going to stay. Tree is going to stay. But there's some other words that stay. Curse words, sex talk, and racial slurs. Those are all stored on the right. And the reason they're stored on the right is because they're not day-to-day words. Day-to-day words are stored on the left. And even if we used them every day as an adult, when we were little and somebody first heard us say that bad word, we were told, don't say that or you're going to be in trouble. And so it's stored on the right. So people who've never used curse words, sex talk, or racial slurs will use them. Sensory input and motor output, the ability to care for themselves, and movement and coordination. Now, I want you to think about, why is it that somebody who's been dressing themselves for 70 years, suddenly I go in and they've got their pants on their arms? That's sequencing. That's step by step. Think about from the minute your eyes opened this morning until you sit down in that chair, how many steps you've already been through, and it's 10:30 in the morning. And if those steps aren't in order anymore, then maybe you put your pants on your arms or your socks on your hands, or 4 shirts on, but no pants, or 2 different shoes, or you put the toothpaste all over your face to shave. Because you still know how to do it, but there's just too much stuff on the counter.
Hey, Holly, there was if you'll talk about anesthesia, somebody mentioned it in chat.
Yes. That's probably somebody who's heard us talk about this. So anesthesia, there were some studies done, either, it might have been 17, 18. Because we knew for the longest time that people with dementia seemed to get worse after anesthesia. And some people would even say after anesthesia, now I'm talking general anesthesia, intubated, down the throat anesthesia, not twilight, back of the hand anesthesia. This is big anesthesia, like for a major surgery. It's not that they're worse. It's not that they get worse. It's that something in that general anesthesia is like throwing gasoline on a fire on the brain. They actually did study. I saw this scans. It looked like fireworks going off on the brain when general anesthesia was given. And in people with dementia, it made the plaque grow. So if there's already plaque there, now what if we're one of those people that has the plaque growing, but we don't know about it yet? Maybe we're just having some little teeny tiny things that the family thinks I'm just getting older. And then I come out from under anesthesia and the family says, they got dementia because of the anesthesia. That surgery caused their dementia. I've heard that over and over and over. Surgery didn't cause the dementia, it pushed it forward. It was already there. Because then if the family starts getting educated about, oh, the judgment, the reasoning, oh, well, they were doing that, right. That was their dementia showing up.
So you say it makes the plaque grow in FTD, there's not plaque, would it also affect?
It does
Okay,
with all the dementias.
all of them.
Now, what it's doing with the FTD, I'm not sure.
Not sure
I know
what
with
it
the ones
is.
with the plaque, it's making that plaque grow, but all of the dementias,
It
it
affects-
can also really cause them to have delirium. Now,
Mhm.
delirium, that can happen to any of us after a surgery. That's just a risk with anesthesia. But for somebody with dementia, that delirium can last a long time. That's one of the my mom's delirium lasted so long, she ended up biting my daughter. She would have never done that. She was fighting. And in the delirium, she bit. She doesn't get general anesthesia anymore. We don't do that. We can go in and we can be an advocate. And all we've got to do is talk to that anesthesiologist. You can have major surgeries and just be under general anesthesia for a short amount of time. You don't have to be under it for a long amount of time. We've got to be an advocate. And don't be afraid to talk to those doctors. So many times we say, but the doctor said, right, because they're making it as easy on them as they can. We can go in and ask for twilight. We can ask for locals, even for a knee replacement. I had a femoral block that went in right there. Then I went under general anesthesia because they use power tools. So I was just under long enough for them to use the power tools, but then I was back up while I was still in the operating room. I was back awake. I remember it still. So yes, good question. It is degenerative, it is progressive, it means it will get worse over time, no matter what type of dementia it is. And it's terminal. If they don't die from something else, if they don't pass from something else, then they will die with dementia. But they can die from dementia, anesthesia being one of those 3 reasons why. Aspiration pneumonia is another one. Eventually, they're not going to be able to swallow well. Brain controls everything and the brain is failing. Their diet is going to change as this disease progresses. They're going to go from regular foods to soft foods, to finger foods, to pureed foods, to thickened liquids, if they live long enough. Some people don't live till the end of the disease. Because if they're at life expectancy or over, and life expectancy right now, by the way, is 77 point something, 75 for men and 80 for women in the United States right now. They're already over life expectancy. They could pass at any time just from life expectancy. And then they die with dementia. And the third is becoming septic. The body cannot fight off the infections anymore. They get a really bad urinary tract infection. They get a really bad skin infection because their skin starts to break down. And they can't fight it anymore. And the antibiotics can't work because the part of the brain that tells the antibiotic to work isn't there. And even if we go in the hospital and we get the IV antibiotic, there comes a time that it just doesn't work anymore. How do we get the proper diagnosis? We always want to start with the primary care physician. Always start with the primary care physician because it could be one of those other things we talked about. We want to rule out all of those other things. If it's depression, if it's malnutrition, if it's electrolyte imbalance, if it's some type of vitamin deficiency. So we're going to start at the primary care physician. We need to do a complete physical, medical, and psychological history. If you're a family member of somebody who has dementia or you're suspecting they have dementia, you need to be keeping a little notebook, a little journal, the notes page in your phone, and write down everything you see and hear that you don't think is normal. Because you're going to have about 8 minutes with that doctor. And that's not the time for you to be going, sometime a few weeks ago, if you can write down every day at 3 o'clock you might start seeing a pattern. That doctor might pick up on a pattern. So make sure you're keeping good records. A good history from the person and the family. You want to be in the room with them. Make sure that you're going in with them. And if you don't go in the room with them, if you've got access to the patient portal, you can always send that doctor a note ahead of time. You can send that office staff a note ahead of time. A medication review to see if we're having any issues with medication. Studies like a CAT scan, an MRI, a PET scan, neuropsych testing, and then follow up and counseling or a referral. Now, are they gonna do that with every person? No. What if your loved one is 95 years old and just now at 95 developing the symptoms? What if your loved one is 48 years old? There's a difference in what we're going to choose to do. Am I going to put someone who's 95 through all of these tests, including 4 to 6 hours of neuropsych testing, an MRI, possibly a lumbar puncture? I'm not. I mean, you can. But if someone's 48, 52, 62, and yes, a person can develop dementia at those ages. We've got people living here right now that are in their 50s. Am I going to do all that? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And it's always a choice. So why are we even testing if there's not a cure?
Yeah.
And some people, again, will choose to get the dementia diagnosis and say, we're good. We're going to take the same meds that they're going to put everybody on, that Aricept, Exelon, Namenda, those that we hear of the most often, and we're just going to do the best we can, and we're going to make the most of it, and I'm going to get educated, and I'm going to learn how to go on this journey with them. And many, many families choose to do just that. But the other option is, if somebody is very, very early in the disease, there's now the 2 new meds, the infusions that are out there that people are taking some chances on. I met some last week when I was out in Tyler. And it's supposed to break up that plaque. And some people are having really good results with it. Now, the 2 side effects of that are brain bleeds and brain swelling. And it's pretty expensive. And the people that I know and have met that are using it are people that are in their 50s and 60s, where the family's choosing, and sometimes the patient themselves is choosing, I'm going to take the chance. I'm going to take the risk.
Are they already showing signs of dementia is why they're choosing to
Yes.
do this?
Yeah.
And do you have a percentage on those who have the brain bleeds or the,
I do,
okay.
but not on the tip of my tongue. But while Jamie's talking again, I'll look it up for you. Benefit from support services. The sooner you get into education, the sooner you're going to know about how to go on this journey with your loved one. And I can't tell you, from more than a decade of running support groups, how many families have come back and said, because I changed, their life changed. Because I, as the caregiver, changed, my loved one's life changed. Because now I'm not arguing with them. I'm on the journey with them. I'm meeting them where they are instead of trying to bring them to me. That wasn't working. Here's those top 10 signs. Now I want you to just pretend that says dementia instead of Alzheimer's. Lots of things that you find will say Alzheimer's because that's the most common. Now, is it normal to walk in the room and go, why did I come in here?
Yes.
Yes. So everybody take a big old. You saw Jamie and I earlier going, where's this? Where's that? Where'd we put? Oh, where is it? No dementia, no dementia, just a little stress, just a little stress. Where are my keys? Where are my keys? Oh, there they are, right here. Here's my keys, right here. Where are my glasses? Where's my phone? Where's my park? Okay, wait a minute. But I can go, okay, which door did I come in? I went in the door by the pharmacy, so I'm on that side. I can backtrack and reason, not dementia. Actual memory loss. You missed the appointment. What appointment? I didn't have an appointment. That's memory loss. You missed the appointment because you thought it was tomorrow. Maybe not so much. Maybe that was stress or I wrote it down wrong or something. Problems with language. Starting to forget. Now, again, if you're doing that, wait a minute, here it comes. It's on the tip of my tongue. I've read that statistic. It's here, but I can't find it right now. Probably not. Or we may sit up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, there it is. That's normal. That's normal. Misplacing things. It's normal to misplace things, but we don't want to find our keys in the freezer. And that happens to people with dementia. Or the butter in the cabinet, the oatmeal in the refrigerator. That type of thing. And it's over and over and over. trouble with spatial relationships. Oh, thank you. Difficulty performing familiar tasks, disorientation to time and place, problems keeping track of things, changes in mood and behavior, and withdrawing from work and social activities. And a person with dementia will start to withdraw because they know something's wrong. Everybody needs to hear that. Everybody in here, everybody online, when there's something wrong with your body, you know it. They know it. They might not be telling you. They know it. They know something's wrong.
Okay, so there are things that change that are normal and to be expected as we get older. Okay. Communication between our neurons in our brain, and we have 100 million billion neurons in our brain controlling everything that we do. Right now, they're working, they're regulating your body temperature, they're digesting your breakfast, they're letting you hear, see, process this information, all of the stuff. Those neurons are working hard. Even if you did like a scan of your brain, it would be like fireworks, or like an IT supercomputer up here is working, and your brain does that all the time. As we get older, the connection between those neurons might slow a little bit. So what we might see as, or what we might think, oh gosh, my brain's not working, my memory's not there, I just can't do like I used to, really might just be those neurons are just slowing down a little bit. We just slow down. Physically, I know we slow down a little bit as we get older, but those neurons also start to slow down a little bit. And that's normal and to be expected. Another thing we want to watch out for or know that is that inflammation can happen as we get older. And it's taking steps to mitigate inflammation. So a lot of it has reduced blood flow to the brain, right? If we have a more sedentary life as we get older, we're prone to having more sedentary life. We're not getting our blood flowing through our entire body from our heart up to our brain. So our brain might not be getting that blood flow, the oxygen, the nutrients that it needs to function properly. And our brain actually is a very greedy organ, muscle organ, organ. Very greedy. It takes 25% of all the oxygen that we breathe, takes 25% of all the nutrients that we eat, takes 70% of the glucose that we eat, because it needs this energy, it needs the oxygen for it to function properly. And if we're not getting that nutrients and oxygen up to our brain, largely because of our heart and our brain are directly connected, then our brain might not function properly. It's not getting the fuel that it needs. So if we're not feeding it correctly, we're not moving the blood flow, so we're not moving, getting that exercise, we might notice some more slowing down than we want. We also do see some shrinkage in certain areas of the brain. Now, the hippocampus area of our brain houses our short-term memory and our ability to learn new information. This is a small area in the brain. It's the area of the brain where Alzheimer's disease starts. Alzheimer's disease, the number one most common symptom of Alzheimer's disease is memory loss. That's the first one we see. And that's because that hippocampus area of the brain is starting to be damaged by the plaque that builds up. That's abnormal. What we do know that's normal about aging is the hippocampus area of our brains do start to shrink as we get older. Not to the point where somebody with Alzheimer's disease does, but it shrinks. And that's where we can see some of that slowing of our processing as well. Now, that's a normal thing. Again, we don't have to like it, but it's a normal thing. There are stuff that we can do, exercise, meditation, eating right, that can offset that shrinkage. And those are what we're going to talk about in the next several weeks, so it can offset that. But that is a normal thing that happens, okay? We also know our responses to our sensory stimulation slows down. So why we tend to see people, fall a little bit more as we get older is because our response to those things that we should respond to quicker just slows down. And this is all part of that slowing down process. Because if I'm walking along and I trip over something, well, I can catch myself. But as I get older, my response, my brain to that trip to catch myself, that whole network and my neurons working for that to catch myself is slowing down. So I might not be able to catch myself and then I actually do fall because it's just a slowing down process. So our response time, whether we're walking also in car, like when we're driving, to our response time can be slower. So we see that. But I also want us to know as we get older, some other things are happening. Our brain is very resourceful. We never stop learning, or we should never stop learning. We never stop growing neurons, and we never stop strengthening neurons if we work at it. So the neurons that are controlling everything in our brain, we can grow them and we can strengthen neuronal connections if we work at it, if we choose to. And that never goes away. Just because we get older, that is something we'll always be able to do. We're much better at perceiving other people's interpersonal communication. Our perceptions about the world is different. We have our own past that we rely on. And we have read several studies to where the older population has a little bit less stress because we're better able to respond to these demands of life because we've been through it and we know there's no need to get our feathers ruffled about that because it's not that big of a deal. Or I have better coping skills that I've learned as I've gotten older. So the older population can have less stress if we choose to use it that way, right? And then we have this, our plastic brain. So we're always able to adapt to new challenges. Where our brains are malleable. Like I said, we can grow and strengthen those new neurons. And then we have a large cognitive reserve. So this is where we have built up over the course of our lifetime, this reserve of energy, thinking, memory, emotional intelligence, IQ intelligence, that we just built this up that we can pull from. We have this large cognitive reserve as the older population, as opposed to a younger population where that reserve might not be as large. So it's kind of like we have this big ocean of reserve over here that we can just pull from as we need it, as we get older. Okay, so there's some great things about our brain as we get older. Okay, that's cool. Okay. Has any of you, and Holly said this a minute ago, but you walk into the room, why did I walk in here? Or if you're me, I am sitting at my computer, literally right here, and something, oh, I need to write down on my calendar that's right here. I don't have to move, I swivel is all I do. And then I do, why did I come and look at my calendar? And we think, so what happens is that we walk into that room or we just swivel in our chair and we look around, okay, why, what? And then we say it out loud. You say it to yourself. Why did I walk in here? Why did I do this? Literally with me, it's like, what the hell am I doing right now? Literally, I just thought about it from 1 nanosecond to the next, it's gone. But we try to cue ourselves in. Right? So we say it out loud, we look around, what was I doing? Or we'll go back to either physically where we were when we had that, oh, I need to do something. I need to walk into that room, or I need to write on my calendar, or I'll swivel back in my chair. So we're trying to cue ourselves in to these things. As we get older, we see this happen a lot more often. Damn it, what was I doing? Why did I walk in here? It happens a lot more often. Yeah, we did it when we were younger, but it happens a lot more often. It also happens a lot more often when we're high stressed, we're overwhelmed, or we got a lot of demands. We're doing too many things. We're multitasking. We're doing too many things at once. And we'll learn over the next several weeks, nobody's good at multitasking. Some maybe a little better, but not really. Okay. But what we're doing, and then we start to be like, well, why am I in here? Why does this always happen? I can't remember this stuff. And it's kind of like if you've ever done this, but you clicked on your mouse and you clicked on it and didn't do what it was supposed to do. And then you click on it again and you keep clicking on it. And it's like, why is this not working? And then you get that circle of loading. Or
Circle
it's
of death.
done. Yeah. And that's what happens to, and it keeps going. It circle in an hour, 30 minutes, hours, just loading and loading, loading. That's kind of what's happening to our brains. Because a lot of the time what happens is I'm not gonna think about it. I don't remember when I walked in this room. I don't remember what I was gonna write on that damn calendar. I've got to move on with my life. I'm just gonna do something else. Later on in the day, it comes to you. So it finally loaded. It just didn't take, or it took longer than you wanted it to take. But this is what's happening in our brain. And the other thing is on our working memory. So we have our working memory and our short-term memory. Our working memory is what we are using right now. Short-term memory is what we're using in the immediate short term. So working memory is I need it right now within the next few minutes. I'm going to use that information, like 5 minutes to 30 minutes. Short-term memory is maybe I need it, within the next hour for a few days, maybe even a couple of weeks. So it's a little bit longer. Normal brain can hold about 5 to 8 things in our working memory. So I'm working through, it's kind of like I've got 5 to 8 tabs open on my desktop or my computer or on my phone. And I'm using all of those right now. So I can kind of flip back and forth through between 5 and 8 of those. A lot of times it's just 5 for me. Okay, it depends on. If I'm real well rested, eating well, don't have stress, I can do 8. A brain that's not aging as well, or that does have mild cognitive impairment or early stage dementia, they can hold about 2 to 4 working items in their memory. And then as the disease progresses, it gets a little bit less from there, okay? But we understand that about our brains, which is a good thing that we know what's going on with this. But some other things that will happen as we get older that are normal, and I'm going to use my dad as an example because he is aging normally so far, okay? My dad will be 75 in August. He's practiced, he has good, healthy lifestyle. He exercises, he eats well, he has pretty low stress, he is very social, the things that we're going to teach. So he's aging well, but a great thing about my dad is my dad is let me back up. There's no normal aging. There's just your normal aging. There's not like this blanket, you've got to follow this list of things to do and you're aging normally. Everybody's normal aging is your personal normal aging. And with my dad, there are several things that I know this is normal about my dad. If that changes for him, then that would be abnormal aging for my dad, and that would be a conversation we would need to have. But my dad, I kid you not, and I'll tell you some stories that I'm not exaggerating, true stories, but my dad constantly loses his phone, his keys, or his wallet. All the time. Leaves them behind, leaves them at my house, can't find them in his house, whatever it is, leaves them in the Uber he was in when he's on vacation, leaves them on the grass. He was sitting out having a picnic, just leaves them. You would think after 75 years, it would dawn on him to like, hey, I need to check my pockets before I leave. But that's not my dad. That's not his normal aging. He just leaves those things. What is I know okay about my dad, that's his normal. He's always been like that. It's nothing new. But he can tell me in detail where he left his phones, his keys, or his wallet, and can always retrace his steps. And Holly alluded to this earlier. He can retrace his steps and tell me in detail. Oh, he has the best stories ever. He was at a fireworks show one day, July 4th, a couple of years ago. He had his whole picnic laid out there, left his keys and he didn't leave his keys, but left his phone and his wallet out there out in the middle of this big open field, drove all the way home. Next morning, needed his phone and his wallet, realized he didn't have it. Of course, he went into a major panic, right? Can't contact anybody and I don't have my wallet. But his brain was rational and logical enough after he went through the initial panic to say, okay, I'm going to need to retrace my steps. What have I been doing? So he retraced his steps. He did. Luckiest man in the state of Texas, and his wallet and his phone were still there in this big open field. And he has several stories like that. Okay. But that's normal for Dad. If he was not able to retrace his steps or tell me in detail this extravagant story, then I would think, okay, that's something different about Dad. Something's off, right? He's also, anybody here have a hard time remembering people's names?
Yeah, always.
Yeah, always. Thanks. Always had a hard time remembering people's names. Here's a tip for you. You're always going to have a hard time remembering people's names. It's not like we just automatically learn people's names as we get older. There's something about that's going to be your normal. Aging normally. I'm going to have a hard time remembering people's names. So we're going to have to put stuff in place to help me remember people's names. My dad always relied on my mom to remember people's names. She could remember people's names. She could remember people's birthdays, what their relationship is. So good. But now my mom passed away and Dad's kind of lost. Like, I don't know. What are these? He's asking me, and I don't know these people. What are you talking about? But his new wife now has stepped in and filled in, remembering people's names for them. Thank goodness. She's also put air tags on his wallet and his phone and his keys, and she's put more things in place to help him with these lost items, right? But this is normal aging. He doesn't like it. It makes him panic. There has been several times in his life where he's really been concerned about his memory and his thinking. But we have to talk through, Dad, this is normal. You just got to put some stuff in place. If it changes for you down the road, then that's the time to have a more in-depth conversation. But you just got to fill in. Does that make sense? Fill in those things. One other thing, Holly alluded this, getting lost in familiar places, but I might have to pause for a moment to remember the way. And I do this all the time, but it's a new place and you park, and I have to really, like, okay, where did I park? I need to really visually, and sometimes I'll say it out loud. I'm by the Dillard's door and I'm walking into the men's cologne section and I'm going up the escalator, and I say it out loud because I won't remember. There's been several times I've walked out of the mall and had to walk the mall because I couldn't remember which door. I wasn't paying attention. But I know that about me, and sometimes I have to say it out loud. And then I park in the same spot every single time I come back to that place. Right? But that's normal. If I was saying that out loud to myself and doing, even so, I know some people that take pictures of their parking spot and they still couldn't find their car, then maybe there would be something else there. Unable to learn. So as we get older, we're always able to learn something new. Again, we can grow new neurons, strengthen those neurons. But what happens is that we might be unwilling to learn something new. It's not that we can't. We just don't want to. Smart TVs, new phones. I already got somebody shaking their head. Never needed it in the first place. I'm certainly not going to learn how to do it now. Right? It's not that you can't, you're just unwilling to. Or you don't want to, don't need it, whatever it is. Okay. No, but you can do it. Now, somebody that can't learn the new device, that might be something else.
So much of this also just describes people with ADHD.
Yeah.
Is there a stronger inclination to get dementia if you have ADHD?
I don't know. That is a great question. Holly, do you have any
I've
idea?
never seen it.
I've never heard that.
Asked
That's
before,
something.
and I've never seen it.
Okay.
Because everyone in my family is ADHD,
Yeah. Okay.
except for me.
Yeah.
Although I'm getting it the more I caregive.
Sure. Yeah. And some of that might just be stress, right? Inattention to details, and multitasking. I mentioned that earlier. It is listed up here. As we get older, we're not able to multitask like we used to. And we really need to be honest with ourselves. We're really good multitaskers in the first place. Millions of studies have been shown that you just don't multitask. It's not good. You're not getting things done faster or more efficiently. You just need to focus on one task and then move on to the next. Okay. But as we get older, that's much harder for us to do. are also our times to learn something new or our good parts of the day. We are kind of more set in stone for those. And if we think about when we're younger and maybe we're going through school or we have a lot of stuff going on, we can, our times to learn or to be attentive or have focus can fluctuate throughout the day. Like I can get up and I can teach a class in the morning, but I can also go to a class in the evening, right? And I can focus and I can learn and can process. As I get older, that time for me to learn and process the best is really gonna kind of be, I have a better part of the day and that's all there is to it. Not that I can't do it at my not better part of the day, it's just gonna be so much harder. So it's really kind of rearranging if I need to go to a doctor's visit or I've got to do my taxes or whatever it is, I need to do it in that part of the day where it's just a better part of the day for me. A lot of people, it's morning time, we're more alert, more attentive, but different for each person. That's my better part of the day and that's when I need to rearrange. If I'm gonna learn something new, take a class, whatever it may be, let's try and do it around that time of day. And that's a normal part of aging, just kind of more rigid in those things. You may notice a faint decline in finding words. You know, what if it's on the tip of my tongue? It's right there. If you said it, that I could tell you it was right or not. So it's there. It'll come to you later, or I can't remember the name of the actor in that movie I wanted to tell you about because you would absolutely love it. I can see it all, but I just can't, it just can't come. The name of the movie or the actor won't come to me. Later tonight, when I don't need it anymore, whoop, there it is. Not thinking about it. Don't need it, don't matter. It's gonna happen more often, that's normal. Don't gotta like it, but it's normal, right? Forgetting where you put something, but you can retrace your steps. And another one I'll talk about is, not always, but it is more typical that person is aging normally, they have more concerns about their memory and thinking. Like I mentioned, my dad, yes, there are times that he does get very concerned about his thinking and memory or has in his past. But those of us around him are not, because we know this is dad's normal aging. Now, if something were to change, that would be different, right? But people that are not aging normally, or that are aging normally tend to have more concerns about it than those around them. Whereas somebody not aging normally, those around them tend to have more concerns than them sometimes, right? They know something's wrong, but they may not be willing to talk about it, right? Or they'll make a joke about it or get angry or just shut down. So always be able to make sense out of things. We'll always be able to have good judgments about things, perceive the world better. Like I mentioned earlier, we can have less stress as we get older. Always be able to learn new information as well.
I was looking at the statistics. There's an awful lot of them. So on these newest medications, and especially the Leqembi, when somebody had mild cognitive impairment, the latest statistics are showing that about 62% of the time, 18 months later, they are showing a plateau. Now I haven't got to where how many of those had any type of side effects, but it's out
too
there.
soon to
It's
know.
out there. All right, so let's look at abnormal aging. It's going to be the opposite of the things that Jamie talked about. Now, this is a key right here, and this is how a person gets diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, then on to a dementia. How do we move from mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal Lewy body, when it starts interfering with day-to-day life? A person can have MCI, mild cognitive impairment, and still working. A person can have MCI and start making those lifestyle changes that we're going to talk about and slow down the progression. Like Jamie said earlier, if I can slow this for 5 years because I changed my diet, I changed exercise. Actually, we're going to flip it now. And I've learned this myself from a neurologist and then from a nutrition who said it's the other way. Exercise is even more important than diet. So exercise is going to be first and then diet. Oxygenated blood up to our brain. Somehow we got to do something. And that's why I was saying we get in a routine and we're not moving, or we're doing the same thing.
Is there any evidence to show that plaque buildup can be actually reversed and the plaque disseminate with exercise and diet? Because I've not found anything yet that says that,
It doesn't, but it like halts it or slows it down.
but not showing that.
But it's not taking it
reverse-
away.
Erase it. Right.
It's not taking it away, but if I carry on doing what I'm doing right now, and I'm gonna be full blown in 5 years or in 2 years, or if I change my diet, my exercise, my social, those type things, and it's gonna be 5, 6, 7, because we don't know, it's different for
Okay.
everybody.
They will, someday they'll have some evidence.
They will, they will.
Not-
Abnormal aging. Jamie also mentioned a person who has normal aging tends to be a little more concerned about it than a person who has abnormal aging. If that makes sense. Jamie and I might talk to each other and going, have you been noticing that I'm doing a little more? Because I'm noticing it, I'm really noticing it, even though I'm fixing it. I realized I missed the meeting or I almost missed the meeting or where that person with dementia, we're noticing it, but they aren't. Now, I said earlier, they know something's going on. They do know something's going on, but they may not be connecting what it is that's going on. I just know something's not right. And then I'm gonna get mad at you if you bring it up, by the way. True story. Whenever somebody's getting lost and it's taking hours to get home, if they get home, there's a difference. Becoming less able to do things like, in the big scheme of things, for everybody in this room, except our student who's in here, this is new learning. Now, for her, this is normal learning. We could hand her a dial-up phone and she'd look as confused as we think on these things. Because she's a teenager. But this is new learning because none of us grew up with this. So eventually, with a lot of people with dementia, this thing becomes this, where they'll be trying to use it as a remote, and eventually it goes away. Because what is that thing? Anyway, they go away. And that new learning is not going to happen. We can sit all day long and show them swipe, 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 swipe. And maybe sitting there side by side, they're doing it. I get up and go do something, come back and ask them to swipe and they take it from me. And the swipe also means take it from you. And I say swipe the phone, and so they reach over and they go, because it's gone. New learning isn't gonna happen. Loss of interest in social activities, we talked about that one, and then a noticeable decline in memory for recent events. Or even being able to have a conversation. And I hear that a lot from families. What can I talk to them about? I can't go up and say, what'd you have for breakfast? What'd you think about that movie last night? I didn't watch a movie last night, you stupid. Okay. Now, why did they add that you stupid on there? Because I just insinuated they did something that they forgot, and it makes it sound like they did something wrong. So you're stupid. Because another thing that's going away is their filter. Don't say that, don't do that. Yes, say that, yes, do that. That's going away. They'll say and do things they never would have said or done. Again, there's that the family member or friends are more concerned about it than they are. Or you may even be getting back, you're the one with the memory problem, not me. You're just as old as I am. That's really common also. Frequent trouble. Now, you and I, again, and Jamie said, and we're going to have those probably today. I will have several instances of, okay, just a second. Okay. Or like Jamie said, we both have 2 screens in our office where we swivel. That's probably not good because we're going, and I know if we've got 3 screens. That's not good, especially as we get older. Mercy me, I can't keep, or I'll just start on this one and go, wait, oh, that one timed out, or whatever it was. But for somebody with dementia, when they start substituting words, especially words like thing and stuff, you know, the thing, the stuff, the thing and stuff, because they become just very generic words. And adverbs and adjectives will start to go away. misplacing things, not being able to retrace them, or confabulating a story. Notice I used confabulate, not lie. A person with dementia, for the most part, they can't lie, they can confabulate, just like they can't steal, but they can go shopping. There's a difference. I'm taking it versus I'm intentionally gonna hide this in my pocket. Confabulating is I'm gonna make up a story to make it fit, because you keep saying that I was the last one with the remote, and I was not the last one with the remote, even though I am sitting on it. So it must be that, and they make up a story. It's confabulation. Forgetting how to do familiar things like getting dressed, forgetting an entire event or an occasion. But Mom, it was just, and now you know what they're doing? That hippocampus is dying, but that amygdala is still very much alive, and the amygdala holds feelings and emotions. And they're reading your voice, your tone, your body language, and your facial expressions.
Hmm.
And they're seeing you get upset. Now they're getting upset. Now we're getting in a fight. And who caused it? I did. I didn't cause it on purpose. Because all I was saying was, yes, yesterday too. No, we didn't. I wasn't there. Yes, yesterday. Remember yesterday when we insinuating something's wrong with me? And you might get a bite, hit, kick, punch, spit, curse word. And it's just because my filter's not working. Mood and personality changing, and then making poor decisions. And again, keep in mind, just because someone's having some memory loss, it doesn't always mean it's dementia. That's why we start at the primary care physician. If somebody needs their hearing checked, we want to get their hearing checked. But people will say, but they won't keep their hearing aids in. They won't keep their glasses on. They won't keep their dentures in. Right. Because they probably haven't always. Dementia, it's like they're going back in time. And if they are now in their mind in their 40s, and I didn't wear glasses in my 40s, these aren't my glasses anyway, you stupid. I don't wear glasses. And I sure don't wear this thing in my ear. What is that thing going on? It's bothering me anyway, and it's screeching and it's making noise. I think I'll put it in my tea. That's a good place for it. And there went $5,000. That's dementia. Somebody having extreme pain could be confused.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Of course.
Going
The
back
things
to the
that
hearing.
happen.
There's supposed to be studies, and people who sell hearing aids are
Mhm.
really promoting that if you don't wear hearing aids, it can affect, can cause dementia. I'm not convinced of that. I'm wondering if it's more that you're missing things which make you appear dementia, or if it actually is affecting the brain.
It is, and I'm gonna let Jamie, as we're going into
Okay.
optimal brain aging, there actually is some study that relates hearing loss with dementia. There are some studies about that.
Yeah, and I would say it's both. You're missing things, or didn't hear, right? So you're
People
just,
think
and you're filling in what you think you hear. But it also leads to isolation. When you don't hear, you're not hearing, or even seeing, it leads to isolation. So you bottle up, and that leads to depression, which can increase your risk. So it's just kind of a cumulative
And
things
it's
that
leading
build
to
up.
isolation, and that's what may be actually causing the brain.
It would be a cumulative of all of the things, but there is also some like Holly said, there's changes that happen in the brain
Okay.
from hearing loss that can lead to memory loss too. But it's cumulative. It's a combination of all the things, I think, right? Mhm. Yeah.
There is a new article that's out. If you Google hearing loss and dementia, because I knew that I had just read this, and there are some studies about it, and it even gives the odds. So if you Google hearing loss and dementia, there's some recent studies.
Because I've had like an aunt who lived to be 101 and didn't wear hearing aids. And she needed hearing aids, but actually her mind stayed good. And then another relative.
So
I'm
that's
kind of
again-
basing it on my experience.
And that's where, and you've heard us say, in the classes where we say you've seen one person with dementia, you've seen one person with
You can't
dementia,
just
because
generalize.
everybody's is,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
different.
Yeah. And everybody's aging differently,
Yep.
right? So, yeah, good questions though. And it was, in chat, they were talking about, somebody said, my mom needs glasses, but she doesn't wear them, right? And the importance of having, and we'll talk about this more, but the importance of just having your advanced care planning put in place. And somebody mentioned that we have our wishes and wants written down, whether we're caregiving or not. If you're 18 years old, you need to have your wishes and wants and how you want the rest of your life to go. Now, it's not a set document, it's a living document, right, as you go along, but it's important to have all that put in place and somebody know what your wishes and wants are, and you got those proper documents in place as well. And then somebody else also mentioned about mood and personality changes. That it does change mood and personality, it can, but her experience was that her person she lived there was a more positive person. And I wanted to kind of address that because I saw that with my mom as well, because we do think mood and personality changes. Most of the time we hear, and people will say, well, when's the point they just become angry or mad or they get mean? Well, getting mean and angry is not a part of dementia. It's not a symptom. You and I get angry and we get mad because of a variety of things. Now, sometimes we might be more in control of our anger or emotions or how we express ourselves because our brain is healthy. So we do have more emotional regulation and control. Somebody with dementia getting angry or mad is a part of being a human being. They just might not be as in control of their emotional regulation. But there's also some changes, like in chat, her mom person got more positive. They saw positive change in mood and behavior. With my mom, who had symptoms of dementia the last few years of her life, she became more social. She was very much a homebody type person her whole life, but she became more social. And that was nice to see. It was different for mom, right? It was one of those like, oh, what's going on here? This is different, but it wasn't, it was good. So we can see all of those things, right? And I just wanted to address that. Persons with dementia aren't going to become mean and angry because of the disease. A lot of the times it's the environment or how we're approaching them, but we can change that. So I mentioned these earlier, just some quick facts about the brain, because over the next several weeks, again, we're going to dive deep into these proven scientific ways to reduce our risk for getting dementia or Alzheimer's disease related dementias, and just age to the best of our abilities. We have optimal brain aging, right? A healthy brain is 3 pounds. Your brain, my brain right now is 3 pounds. Somebody that has dementia, they are losing brain tissue. So in the very late stages of the disease, their brain can be 1 pound. So there's some differences there. Right? But a healthy brain is 3 pounds. Like I mentioned, it consumes 1/4 of our oxygen supply, 1/4 of the nutrients. We need to make sure that we're feeding it the right nutrients. We're getting all that oxygen up there so our heart's working well enough to pump the blood, the nutrients, the oxygen's up to our brain. The glucose, we need glucose because our brain needs energy because it is working hard 24/7. So we need to make sure it has the energy to actually work. It's the fattest organ we have. It's the greediest organ we have. I just mentioned that. And then we have those neurons, about 100 billion neurons. And one neuron can have 1 to 10,000 other connections throughout the brain. Very complex. And like I mentioned earlier, we can always grow and strengthen neuronal connections. And that's what we want to continue. We don't want to stop learning for our lives, throughout our lives. And we do use 100% of our brain. Maybe not 100% of the time, but we do use 100% of our brain. So even when we sleep, we'll talk about this, certain parts of our brain turn off, others turn on. So all the brain's used.
So those guys in the movies that say you only use 15%. That's
just a lie.
Yeah, that's a line in a movie, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or they're trying to get you to buy something.
Or they're trying to get you to buy something, right?
This special vitamin.
This will unlock all the areas of your brain. Yeah. So risk factors, we do want to talk about and understand our risk factors, but I mentioned this earlier, age is our greatest risk factor. But again, it does not mean just because we're getting older, it's a normal part of aging. It just increases our risk. trauma to the brain, I'll get to this. So if we want to make sure and wear helmets or seatbelts, because if we had trauma, even from our past, we can see residual effects of it in the future, like several years into the future. So we just want to make sure we put good risk, safety measures in our lives. People that have Down syndrome, if they live long enough, they'll start to have, accumulate the plaques and tangles, the same ones that we see in Alzheimer's disease. So they're doing some research on that. It's an interesting thing. Mild cognitive impairment. This is somebody that's having some abnormal memory changes, but there's not something else there. So it's not quite Alzheimer's disease or related dementia yet. And it won't always turn into that. People with mild cognitive impairment can stay on they might have a normal memory loss, but they can plateau or stay the same. About 50% of them will go on to develop dementia. So you'll see other brain changes. And then some of those, depending on treatment and what's causing that mild cognitive impairment, they may, Holly mentioned, reverse some of that memory loss. And then family. So there is some genetic components that we can see in different types of dementia. With Alzheimer's disease, there is, in Lewy body, there's a few different common dementias that have a mutation of a gene that can increase your risk. This is a very high overview of this. Now, this mutation of this gene can increase your risk, but it's not deterministic. So it doesn't mean just because you might get this gene that increases your risk that you're going to get this dementia. It just increases your risk, okay? So we're gonna do these other things that can offset or reduce our risk for dementia. And not all dementias have these genetic components, but there are some dementias that are more familial related, like a frontotemporal dementia. We do tend to see that run in families more so than Alzheimer's disease, for instance. And I will say this, if you don't have dementia in your family, like Alzheimer's disease or anything else, it doesn't mean that you're not susceptible to getting it either. So it's an unprejudiced disease. Anybody can get it across the world. Doesn't matter what age you are, doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter how much money you make. We're all kind of at risk. So we're gonna learn these ways to reduce our risk. But as you can see on the chart, most of this, some of this genetic factors, but the majority of it is lifestyle choices. And that's what we're going to be practicing or learning about and asking you to practice over the next several weeks. Hollie's talked about a lot of these. Of course, head trauma, gender, I don't know that's been mentioned. Women are more, 2/3 more likely to get Alzheimer's disease. A lot of that is because women tend to live longer also. The life expectancy Hollie mentioned earlier is about 5 years more than men. So. And then some lifestyle, so pollutions, toxic chemicals, we're going to make sure that we're also not breathing in toxins or even cleaning things. You know, we're being careful about what we breathe in because that can have poor outcomes for our brains too. Right.
Yeah, some of those things maybe could be reversed because I've visited with a guy in memory care that he had been put in there, he'd been diagnosed by a doctor, he needed to be in there. But once they got him in there and fed him right, he was drinking water and taking his medicines. They released him after a few months.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what's causing those changes. You're going to get to the root cause of those changes. Yeah.
So these are the things that we are right at time. We've got about 2 minutes. This is what we're going to look at over the next few weeks. So we're going to deep dive into each of these, that managing the risk factors that Jamie just went over, that plant-based diet. Now people hear the word plant-based and go, well, I'm in Texas. I said plant-based, that didn't say no meat at all. Because even on the Mediterranean diet, even on the MIND diet, which is going to be the one we really talk about, MIND, MIND diet, you can still have meat. We just don't have it at every single meal like we tend to have it in Texas. We do need to cut back on that red meat, but we'll deep dive into that. Exercise is another one, and we're going to talk about what kind and how much. I'll give you the number. It's 150 minutes a week, 150 minutes a week. Sleep, stress, staying socially connected, and brain fitness. That's gonna be our real fun one with neurobics. How do we light up all the areas and not just light up one area over and over and over again? Because what Jamie was talking about, whenever when I was saying we get in a routine, if I go to the gym every day, and you'll hear me say this, and all I do is sit there and pump iron with my right arm, I'm gonna have a really good looking right arm. But the rest of me, I'm not doing anything. Same thing with our brain. If I do that easy crossword book, because I can do it while I'm cooking and watching TV, because I'm so good at easy crosswords, we're lighting up the same area over and over and over. We need to try the hard ones or the medium ones. Well, that's too hard, right? We gotta light up some other areas. Just like we don't like learning the new phone update, but we do it. Because we have to, or the phone won't go. Okay, so that will all be cognitive health. Where's my clipboard?